Royal guard kicks down music room door after hearing Charlotte scream, "Let me out." Charlotte had always believed that the palace was a place of calm and beauty. She had grown up hearing stories of grand halls, shining chandeliers, and gardens that seemed to stretch forever. When she finally arrived there as a young music tutor, she felt like she had stepped into one of those stories. The walls were painted in soft colors, the floors were polished until they shone, and the air always smelled faintly of fresh flowers. Everything looked perfect. She taught the princess every afternoon. The princess was kind and curious, and Charlotte enjoyed her company. She was not a princess who demanded things or acted like she was better than everyone else. She asked questions about the world, and she wanted to learn. Charlotte found herself smiling more in those lessons than she had in a long time. Charlotte's own room was small, but it was comfortable. It had a tiny window that looked out over the palace gardens. Sometimes she would sit there at night and listen to the soft sounds of the palace. The guards walking, the distant laughter of guests, the quiet steps of servants. It was a life she never imagined she would have, and she was grateful for it. But the palace was not always calm. Charlotte had started to notice small changes in the past few weeks. The guards seemed more serious. They spoke in low voices and they walked faster. The staff moved around the halls with nervous energy, as if they were trying to get their work done before something happened. Even the princess seemed quieter. She did not laugh as much. She did not play her music as often. Charlotte wondered if something was wrong, but no one would say. On this particular evening, the palace felt heavier than usual. The sky outside was dark, and the wind moved through the trees like a restless animal. Charlotte had spent the day teaching, and now she was alone in the music room. She had stayed late because she wanted to practice a piece she had been working on for weeks. It was a difficult melody, full of sharp notes and long, slow parts. She loved it, but it made her hands ache. The music room was large, with high ceilings and tall windows. The piano stood in the center, its black surface shining under the soft lights. There were shelves of sheet music, some old and worn, others new and clean. The room was usually peaceful, but tonight it felt like something was waiting. Charlotte sat at the piano and placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath and began to play. At first, the notes sounded perfect. She closed her eyes and let the music flow through her. The melody rose and fell like waves. She could feel her worries melting away. But as she continued, she began to feel uneasy. She could not explain why. It was not a feeling of danger exactly. It was more like a sudden coldness that came over her, a sense that something was not right. She stopped playing and looked around the room. Everything seemed normal. The windows were closed, the door was shut, the room was quiet. Charlotte tried to laugh at herself. She told herself she was being silly. She was alone in a palace, after all. It was natural to feel a little nervous in such a big place. She returned to the piano and began to play again. This time her hands shook slightly. The notes sounded less smooth. She tried to focus, but her mind kept wandering. She thought about the changes she had seen in the palace. She thought about the serious faces of the guards. She thought about how the princess had stopped smiling. Charlotte stopped playing once more. She stood up and walked to the door. She pressed her ear against it and listened. At first, she heard nothing. Then she heard something faint in the distance, a soft, muffled sound like someone talking quietly. She could not make out the words, but it sounded urgent. She stepped back from the door, her heart beating faster. She wondered if she should go find someone. Maybe she should tell a guard that she felt uneasy, but she did not want to cause trouble. She did not want to be seen as someone who made a big deal out of nothing. She returned to the piano again, but she did not play. Instead, she sat down and stared at the keys. She waited. The muffled sound grew louder, and she realized it was not talking. It was a voice. A voice that sounded like it was trying to call for help. Charlotte stood up quickly and walked to the door again. She pressed her ear against it once more. The voice was clearer now. It was a woman's voice, and it sounded scared. Charlotte could not hear the words clearly, but she could feel the fear in the tone. Charlotte's mind raced. Who could be in the music room? She was supposed to be alone. She had locked the door when she entered. She had checked it herself. She had been careful. She had always been careful. Her hands began to tremble. She reached for the door handle, but she stopped. What if the voice was inside? What if someone had come in without her noticing? What if she was in danger? Charlotte took a step back. She tried to think clearly. She knew the palace had rules. The music room was a place of art and beauty. No one was supposed to use it for harm. She had never seen any sign of violence in the palace. She did not want to believe something bad could happen here, but the voice continued. It grew louder and more urgent. Charlotte could now make out a few words. "Let me out," the voice said, and it sounded desperate. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. She did not know what to do. She wanted to run and find a guard. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break the door down and rush inside, but she also knew that running without thinking could make things worse. She stood frozen for a moment, listening. The voice was still inside the room. It sounded closer now, as if the person was moving around. Charlotte felt a wave of fear wash over her. She felt trapped in her own fear. Then she heard something else, a sound like a lock turning. She realized with horror that the door might be locked from the inside. She had not considered that possibility before. She had assumed the room was safe because she was the one inside it. Charlotte tried the door handle. It did not move. She pulled harder. It was locked. She pulled again, but the door held firm. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stepped back and looked around the room, searching for a window or another way out. The windows were tall and high. They were not meant to be used as exits. The walls were solid. There was no other door. She felt a panic rising inside her. The voice inside the room grew louder. It sounded like it was getting more desperate. "Let me out," the person said again, louder this time. The voice sounded familiar. Charlotte could not place it at first. Then it hit her like a cold wave. The voice was hers. Charlotte's hands went cold. She stared at the door in shock. Her own voice was coming from inside the room, trapped behind the door. She did not understand. She had been standing outside the door the whole time. How could her voice be inside? Her mind raced. She tried to remember what had happened. She had been playing the piano. She had felt uneasy. She had listened. She had gone to the door. She had heard a voice. She had tried the handle. She had realized it was locked. And now her voice was inside. Charlotte's fear turned into confusion. She pressed her ear against the door again. The voice was still there, and it sounded like it was right behind the door. The words were clearer now. "Let me out," the voice said again, and this time Charlotte could hear the tremor in her own tone. She could hear the fear in her own voice. Charlotte stepped back from the door, shaking. She looked around the hall, hoping to see someone. The corridor was empty. No one was in sight. The palace was quiet, too quiet. She took a deep breath and forced herself to think. She needed help. She needed a guard. She needed someone strong enough to break the door if necessary. She could not do this alone. Charlotte ran down the corridor, her heart racing. She called out for a guard, but her voice sounded small in the large hall. She shouted again, louder this time. "Guard, please, someone help me." For a moment there was no answer. Charlotte felt the panic rising again. She thought about the voice behind the door. She thought about the way it sounded like her own. She thought about the locked handle. She thought about the empty hall. Then she heard footsteps. A guard appeared at the end of the corridor, moving quickly toward her. He was tall and strong, dressed in the palace uniform. His face was serious and his eyes looked sharp. Charlotte felt relief flood through her. She ran toward him. "Please," she said, breathless. "The music room, someone is inside. I can hear them." "They're saying let me out. The door is locked." The guard stopped and looked at her with concern. "Which room?" he asked. Charlotte pointed. "The music room, please, you have to help. I think someone is trapped inside." The guard nodded quickly. He did not hesitate. "Stay here," he said. "I will check." Charlotte watched as the guard ran toward the music room. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might burst. She could still hear the voice inside calling out. She tried to listen to make sure she was not imagining it. The guard reached the door and pressed his ear to it. He frowned, then looked back at Charlotte. "Stay back," he said. "This might be dangerous." Charlotte nodded, but she could not move. She stood frozen, watching as the guard reached for the door handle. He tried it, and it was locked. The guard's face tightened. He looked around, then raised his hand and called for help. Within moments, more guards arrived. They moved quickly with a sense of urgency. Charlotte felt a mixture of fear and relief. She knew the guards would do something. She just did not know what. One of the guards pulled a key ring from his belt and tried to unlock the door. The lock did not open. The guard tried again, but it remained stuck. He frowned, then looked at the others. "We need to get in," he said. Charlotte watched as the guards discussed what to do. She could hear the voice inside, still calling out. It sounded weaker now, as if the person was losing hope. Charlotte felt tears rise in her eyes. She wanted to help, but she did not know how. The guards made a decision. They stepped back and one of them raised his boot. He kicked the door hard. The sound of the kick echoed through the corridor. The door shook. Charlotte's heart jumped. She held her breath. The door did not open yet. The guards looked at each other, then the guard kicked again, harder. The wood splintered. The lock broke. With a loud crack, the door burst open. Charlotte felt a rush of air and a wave of relief. She rushed forward, ready to see who was inside, but what she saw made her freeze. Inside the room, a woman lay on the floor, trembling and crying. Her hair was messy, her clothes torn, and her eyes wide with fear. She looked up at Charlotte and the guards, her face full of terror. Charlotte realized it was not just anyone, it was her. The woman on the floor was Charlotte, but she looked like she had been through something terrible. Her eyes were filled with pain and her voice trembled as she tried to speak. "Please," the woman said, her voice shaking. "Help me." Charlotte stared in shock. She did not understand. She could not explain what she was seeing. The woman looked like her, sounded like her, and yet she was not the same. Charlotte felt her mind blur. The guards moved quickly to help the woman on the floor. They lifted her gently and supported her. They looked at Charlotte with concern, as if she was the one who had been hurt. Charlotte stood there, trembling. She did not know what to do. She did not know what had happened. All she knew was that something in the palace had gone terribly wrong. And she knew that the calm, beautiful world she had believed in was not as safe as she had thought. Charlotte stood in the music room, frozen, as the guards supported the trembling woman on the floor. The air felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. The guards' faces showed worry, but they also looked confused because they did not know what to make of what they were seeing. The woman on the floor looked exactly like Charlotte. Her clothes were torn, her hair was messy, and her eyes were wide with fear. She was shaking as if she had been through something terrifying. Charlotte felt her own hands start to tremble. She could not believe what was happening. She tried to speak, but her throat felt tight and no words came out. She wanted to ask the guards what they were doing. She wanted to ask the woman on the floor who she was. She wanted to ask herself why she was standing there, watching a copy of herself being held up by strangers. The guard who had kicked down the door stepped closer. He looked at Charlotte with a serious expression. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "are you all right?" Charlotte tried to nod, but her body did not obey. She shook her head instead slowly, as if her body had become too heavy to move. I don't know," she whispered. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. It sounded like it belonged to someone far away. The guard looked at the woman on the floor. "This woman says her name is Charlotte," he said to the other guards. "But she looks like the tutor. She says she was locked in here." The other guards exchanged worried glances. One of them asked, "Are you sure you're not mistaken?" The woman on the floor lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were wet and her voice was shaky. "Please," she said, "I'm not lying. I was locked in here. I heard my own voice from outside. I thought I was dreaming. But I was not. I was trapped." Charlotte felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. The woman's voice was her voice. The way she spoke, the way she sounded, was exactly like her. Charlotte tried to remember what she had heard earlier. She remembered the voice calling out. She remembered the fear in it. She remembered the way it sounded like her own voice. She had thought she was hearing someone else. She had thought someone was trapped inside the room. But now she realized that the voice had been her own. Charlotte's mind raced. She tried to think logically, but her thoughts were moving too fast. She thought about her life. She thought about her work. She thought about the palace. She thought about the strange changes she had noticed in the past weeks. She thought about the serious guards and the quiet princess. She thought about how her life had been calm, but now it felt like everything was shifting. She looked at the woman on the floor again. The woman's eyes met hers, and Charlotte felt a strange connection. It was like looking into a mirror that was alive. The woman's fear seemed to reach into Charlotte's chest, making her heart ache. The guards helped the woman stand up. She was unsteady on her feet, and she leaned against one of the guards for support. Her face was pale and her hands shook. She looked around the room as if she was trying to remember where she was. "Do you know who did this?" one of the guards asked gently. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She swallowed hard, trying to speak. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't remember. I only remember waking up here. I remember the door was locked. I remember hearing myself outside. I remember feeling trapped." Charlotte stepped closer, careful not to get too close. She did not know what to do. She did not know if she should touch the woman or speak to her. She felt like she was walking on a thin line between reality and something else. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a strange dream. "Charlotte," the guard said softly, using her name as if it would help. "Can you tell us what happened?" Charlotte tried to speak, but her voice came out weak. I was practicing," she said. "I was alone. I heard a voice. I thought someone was inside. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. Then the guards came. The guard nodded slowly. And then you saw her? Charlotte swallowed hard. Yes, she said, I saw her. The guard looked at the woman on the floor. Do you know this woman? He asked. The woman's eyes widened. Yes, she whispered. She's me. The guards looked at each other in shock. The room felt like it was spinning. Charlotte felt like she might fall. One of the guards, the one who seemed the most calm, stepped forward. He spoke slowly as if he was trying to make sense of the situation. Ma'am, he said, this is a palace. We don't have time for strange things. If you are the same person, then we need to find out what happened. We need to check your memories. We need to make sure you are safe. The woman on the floor nodded, still trembling. I don't know what happened, she said. I remember being here, I remember feeling scared, I remember hearing my own voice, and then I remember nothing. Charlotte felt her throat tighten. She wanted to scream, she wanted to cry, she wanted to run away and hide, but she knew she could not. She had to stay. She had to face this. The guard looked at Charlotte again. Ma'am, he said, do you have any idea why this might be happening? Charlotte shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. I don't. The guard sighed. All right, he said, we will take both of you to the palace healer. We will find out what is going on. Charlotte felt a wave of relief at the word healer. She felt like she was finally being taken seriously. She felt like someone was going to help her. But at the same time, she felt a strange sadness. She felt like she was losing something. She felt like she was losing herself. The guards helped the woman and Charlotte walk out of the music room. The corridor looked the same as before, but everything felt different. The walls seemed taller. The shadows seemed darker. The air felt colder. As they walked, Charlotte tried to remember the past few weeks. She tried to remember if she had been feeling strange. She tried to remember if she had been tired or stressed. She tried to remember if she had been acting differently. She tried to remember if she had been splitting herself. The thought made her heart beat faster. She had heard of people who felt like they were two different people. She had heard stories of people who felt like they were living in a dream. She had heard stories of people who felt like they were trapped in their own minds, but she had never believed those stories. She had always thought they were for other people, not for her. Now she wondered if she had been wrong. The guards led them to a small room near the palace healer's chambers. The room was quiet and clean. A soft light filled the space. The healer, an older woman with kind eyes, stood by a table waiting. The healer looked at Charlotte and the woman. She did not seem shocked. She did not seem afraid. She looked like she had seen this before. Come in, the healer said softly. Sit down. Charlotte and the woman sat on opposite sides of the room, facing each other. The healer walked between them, looking at each of them carefully. Tell me your names, the healer said. Charlotte opened her mouth, but the woman spoke first. My name is Charlotte, the woman said, her voice shaking. I am the music tutor. I teach the princess. I was locked in the music room. I don't know why. The healer nodded. And you? She asked, looking at Charlotte. Charlotte swallowed hard. She felt like her voice was trapped in her throat. She tried to speak, but the words came out slowly. My name is Charlotte, she whispered. I am the music tutor. I teach the princess. I was outside the music room. I heard a voice. I thought someone was trapped inside. The healer's eyes softened. She looked at both of them and then she spoke. You are both Charlotte, she said, but you are not the same. Charlotte felt her stomach drop. What does that mean? She asked. The healer took a deep breath. It means that your mind is trying to protect you, she said gently. Sometimes, when a person experiences too much stress or fear, the mind can create a way to cope. It can create a separate part of the self. A part that holds the fear, a part that holds the pain. Charlotte's eyes widened. So I created her, the healer nodded slowly. Yes, she said, but not in a way that is your fault. It is not something you chose. It is something your mind did to keep you safe. The woman on the floor looked at Charlotte with tears in her eyes. I don't want to be here, she whispered. I don't want to be trapped. Charlotte felt a deep sadness. She wanted to reach out and hold her. She wanted to tell her that she was not alone. She wanted to tell her that she was sorry. The healer continued. We will help you, she said. We will work together. We will make sure you both feel safe. But you must understand something. You are not alone. You are not the only person who has felt this way. And you will not be judged. You will be supported. Charlotte nodded slowly. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She felt like she was finally being seen. She felt like she was finally being understood. The healer looked at the guards. Please give them time, she said. They will need to rest. They will need to talk. They will need to feel safe. The guards nodded and stepped back. They left the room quietly, closing the door behind them. Charlotte and the woman sat in silence for a moment. The room felt calm, the air felt softer. The light felt warmer. Charlotte looked at the woman and whispered, "I'm sorry." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry too," she said. "I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't mean to make you feel like you were losing yourself." Charlotte shook her head. "It's not your fault," she said. "It's not mine either. It's just something that happened." The woman nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered, "something happened." Charlotte looked down at her hands. She felt her fingers trembling. She thought about the music room. She thought about the locked door. She thought about the voice calling out. She thought about how she had felt trapped even though she had been outside. She realized something then. She realized that the palace was not just a place of beauty. It was also a place of pressure. It was a place where people were expected to be perfect. It was a place where no one was supposed to show weakness. Charlotte thought about the serious guards. She thought about the quiet princess. She thought about the tense atmosphere. She thought about how she had been trying to be strong, trying to be perfect, trying to fit in. She realized that she had been holding too much inside. She realized that her mind had created a way to protect her, and she realized that she was not alone. She looked up at the woman again and whispered, "We will get through this." The woman nodded. "Yes," she whispered, "we will." And for the first time since the door was kicked down, Charlotte felt a small spark of hope. Charlotte sat in the small room with the healer, still trying to understand everything that had happened. The healer had explained that her mind might have created a separate part of herself to protect her from fear. Charlotte had never heard anything like that before. She had always believed that her thoughts and feelings were one single thing. Now she was learning that the mind could be more complicated than she had ever imagined. The woman who looked like her sat across from her, trembling slightly but looking calmer than before. The woman's eyes were still full of fear, but there was also something else in them now, recognition. She looked at Charlotte like she was seeing someone who could understand her. Charlotte felt a strange connection, as if the woman was a part of her that had been hidden for a long time. The healer sat quietly, watching them both. She seemed calm and patient, as if she had seen many people go through similar experiences. She spoke softly so the room felt safe. "You both need to rest," the healer said. "You have been through a shock. You need time to recover." Charlotte nodded. She felt tired, but her mind was still racing. She wanted to ask more questions. She wanted to know why this had happened. She wanted to know if it would happen again. She wanted to know what the future would look like. The healer seemed to understand. "You will have time to ask," she said. "But first you must rest. When you are rested, we will talk more." The healer stood up and walked to the door. She opened it slightly and called out to the guards. A guard stepped in and bowed respectfully. "Please," the healer said, "take them to a quiet room. They will stay there for now." The guard nodded. He looked at Charlotte with concern, as if he wanted to help but did not know how. He guided them out of the healer's room and down a quiet corridor. The palace seemed to be moving in slow motion. The sounds were softer. The air felt calmer. Charlotte could feel her body relaxing slightly. The guard led them to a room that was not far from the healer's chambers. It was a small room with a bed, a chair, and a window. The room was simple, but it felt safe. The guard closed the door behind them and left, leaving Charlotte and the woman alone. Charlotte sat on the bed, still feeling like she was in a dream. She looked at the woman and tried to imagine what it would be like to live in a body that belonged to someone else. She tried to imagine what it would be like to be trapped inside a room and hear her own voice from the outside. The woman sat in the chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked at Charlotte with a sadness that made Charlotte's heart ache. She was a part of Charlotte, but she was also a person with her own fear, her own pain, and her own story. Charlotte spoke softly. "Do you remember anything else?" she asked. The woman shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I remember waking up in the music room. I remember feeling scared. I remember hearing you outside. And then nothing. It's like a wall in my mind. I can't see beyond it." Charlotte nodded slowly. She understood that feeling. She had felt it before, but she had never been able to explain it. She had felt like there were parts of her that she could not reach. She had felt like there were feelings she did not want to think about. She had felt like there were thoughts she had pushed away. She realized that the woman might be the part of her that she had pushed away. Charlotte took a deep breath. She looked at the woman and said, "I'm sorry." The woman's eyes widened. "Why are you sorry?" she asked. Charlotte hesitated. She did not know how to explain. She did not know how to say that she had been scared and had tried to hide that fear. She did not know how to say that she had been trying to be strong all the time, and that she had not realized how much it was costing her. "I'm sorry," Charlotte said again, "because I didn't know you were there. I didn't know you were carrying my fear. I didn't know you were trapped." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't trying to scare you," she whispered. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just afraid. I was just trying to survive." Charlotte nodded slowly. She felt a tear roll down her cheek. She reached out and gently touched the woman's hand. The woman flinched at first, then relaxed slightly. Charlotte felt the warmth of her hand, and she felt a strange comfort. It was as if she was touching a part of herself that she had forgotten. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands. The room felt calm. The air felt lighter. Charlotte felt a small sense of peace, as if the first step toward healing had been taken. After some time, Charlotte stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the palace gardens. The sky was still dark, but the stars were shining. The trees swayed gently in the wind. The world outside looked calm, almost peaceful. Charlotte realized how strange it was that the world could be calm outside while her mind was so full of chaos inside. She wondered if the palace always felt calm on the outside, while inside people were struggling. She thought about the guards. She thought about the healer. She thought about the princess. She thought about the changes she had noticed. She wondered if anyone else was feeling what she was feeling. She wondered if anyone else was hiding their fear. She turned away from the window and sat back on the bed. She looked at the woman again. "We need to talk," she said softly. The woman nodded. "Yes," she whispered. Charlotte took a deep breath. She knew this conversation would not be easy. She knew she would have to face things she had been avoiding. She knew she would have to admit that she had been struggling. But she also knew that it was necessary. She knew that if she wanted to feel whole again, she had to face the parts of herself that she had been hiding. Charlotte began slowly. "Do you remember anything from before this happened?" she asked. The woman shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I only remember being in the music room." Charlotte nodded. She thought about the weeks before the incident. She tried to remember if there had been any moments when she had felt especially scared or stressed. She thought about the serious guards, the quiet princess, and the tense atmosphere. She thought about the palace's pressure to be perfect. She remembered feeling tired. She remembered feeling like she had to always be strong. She remembered feeling like she could not show weakness. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears again. She realized that she had been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. She realized that she had been trying to hide her fear, even from herself. She turned to the woman and asked, "Do you feel the same way? Did you feel like you had to be strong?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "I felt like I had to be strong. I felt like I had to be perfect. I felt like I couldn't tell anyone I was scared." Charlotte felt a deep sadness. She realized that the palace was not only a place of beauty and elegance, it was also a place of expectations. It was a place where people were expected to be perfect. It was a place where people were expected to hide their pain. Charlotte and the woman sat in silence for a while, letting the truth sink in. They both felt tired, but not just physically. They felt tired emotionally. They felt like they had been carrying a heavy load for a long time. Charlotte stood up again and walked to the bed. She sat down and looked at the woman. "We need to find a way to work together," she said. "We need to find a way to share the load. We need to find a way to be one person again." The woman looked at her with hope in her eyes. "Do you think we can?" she asked. Charlotte nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "I think we can, but it will take time, it will take patience, it will take courage." The woman nodded. "I have courage," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to use it." Charlotte smiled softly. "Then we will learn together," she said. They sat together for a while longer, talking quietly. They shared small stories about their life. They talked about the princess, the palace, and the music. They laughed softly at some memories and they cried at others. The room felt warm and safe. As the night went on, Charlotte felt a sense of calm. She felt like she was not alone anymore. She felt like she had found a friend inside herself. She realized that the palace was not just a place of rules and expectations. It was also a place where people could heal. It was a place where people could learn to be kind to themselves. Charlotte looked at the woman one last time before she lay down to sleep. "We will get through this," she said softly. The woman nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "We will." Charlotte closed her eyes and fell asleep, feeling a small spark of hope in her heart. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she had taken the first step. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe. Charlotte woke up early the next morning, feeling a strange mix of calm and worry. The room was quiet, and the soft light of the early sun entered through the window. The palace was slowly waking up. She could hear faint footsteps outside and distant voices from the corridors. It felt normal, almost peaceful, but Charlotte knew that everything had changed inside her mind. She looked at the woman sitting in the chair. The woman was awake too, and she seemed more alert than before. Her eyes looked calmer and her hands were no longer shaking. She looked at Charlotte and offered a small smile. Charlotte returned the smile. It was the first time she felt like she was truly smiling in days. The woman spoke softly. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. Charlotte nodded. "I did," she said, "but I still feel like I'm in a strange dream." The woman nodded. "I know," she said. "Me too." Charlotte stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the palace gardens again. The trees swayed gently and the flowers looked bright and fresh. The world outside seemed peaceful. It was hard to believe that anything could be wrong in a place like this. Charlotte turned back to the woman. "We need to talk to the healer again," she said. "We need to understand what is happening." The woman nodded. "Yes," she said. "I want to know more." Charlotte sat down on the bed and took a deep breath. She thought about the conversation they had the night before. She thought about the healer's words. She thought about the idea that her mind had created a part of herself to protect her. She wondered what else she could learn. She wondered what else she had hidden inside her mind. The door opened quietly, and the guard who had brought them here stepped in. He bowed respectfully. "Good morning," he said. "The healer is ready to see you." Charlotte stood up quickly. She felt a sudden rush of nervousness. She had been hoping to talk more with the healer, but now that the moment was here, she felt afraid. She wondered what the healer would say. She wondered if the healer would be disappointed in her. She wondered if the healer would think she was strange. The guard saw the worry on her face. "Do not worry," he said gently. "The healer is kind. She will help you." Charlotte nodded. She took a deep breath and walked toward the door with the woman. They followed the guard down the corridor. The palace felt quiet, but the air was filled with a sense of tension. Charlotte could feel it in the way the guards walked. She could feel it in the way the staff moved. She could feel it in the way the walls seemed to hold secrets. They reached the healer's room, and the healer welcomed them with a calm smile. She motioned for them to sit down. The room felt warm and safe, like a small refuge inside the palace. The healer looked at both of them and spoke softly. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. Charlotte took a deep breath. "I feel better," she said, "but I still feel confused." The healer nodded. "That is normal," she said. "Your mind is trying to heal. It takes time." "You must be patient," the woman spoke next. "I want to know why this happened," she said. "I want to know why I was trapped." The healer nodded slowly. "That is a good question," she said. "We must look at what happened before the incident. We must look at the stress you were under. We must look at the pressure you were feeling." Charlotte nodded. She thought about the past weeks. She thought about the serious guards, the quiet princess, and the tense atmosphere. She thought about how she had been trying to be perfect. She thought about how she had been trying to hide her fear. The healer spoke gently. "You have been carrying a heavy burden," she said. "You have been trying to be strong for everyone. You have been trying to be the perfect tutor. You have been trying to be a good friend to the princess. You have been trying to fit into a world that is not always kind." Charlotte felt her eyes fill with tears. She had not realized how much she had been carrying. She had not realized how much pressure she had put on herself. The healer continued. "Your mind created a part of you that could carry the fear," she said. "That part of you became trapped because the fear was too strong. Your mind was trying to protect you, but it also made a mistake. It trapped a part of you inside the music room." Charlotte listened carefully. She tried to understand. She tried to accept what the healer was saying. She tried to believe that her mind was not failing her. She tried to believe that she was not broken. The healer spoke again. "We must help the two of you to work together," she said. "We must help you to share your feelings. We must help you to bring the trapped part of you back into the whole." Charlotte nodded slowly. "How do we do that?" she asked. The healer smiled gently. "We will start with small steps," she said. "You will practice speaking to each other. You will practice sharing your thoughts. You will practice listening. You will practice being kind to yourself." The woman looked at Charlotte. "I am scared," she whispered. Charlotte reached out and held her hand. "I am scared too," she said, "but we will do this together." The healer nodded. "Good," she said. "Now I want you to try something. I want you to remember a moment when you felt safe, a moment when you felt happy, a moment when you felt loved." Charlotte closed her eyes. She thought about the princess. She thought about the lessons they shared. She thought about the sound of the piano. She thought about the feeling of the music flowing through her fingers. She remembered the princess laughing softly when she played a simple song. She remembered the way the princess looked at her with trust. Charlotte felt a small smile appear on her face. She opened her eyes and looked at the woman. "Do you remember a safe moment?" Charlotte asked. The woman closed her eyes. She thought for a moment, then she nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "I remember the princess. I remember her kindness. I remember her laughter. I remember feeling like I was needed." Charlotte felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that the woman had memories too. She realized that the woman was not just a scared part of her mind. She was also a part of her that remembered love. The healer spoke softly. "Good," she said. "Now I want you to share those memories with each other. I want you to speak them out loud." Charlotte looked at the woman and spoke slowly. "I remember the princess," she said. "I remember her laughter. I remember the way she trusted me." The woman nodded. "I remember that too," she said. "I remember feeling needed. I remember feeling like I had a place." Charlotte felt tears in her eyes. She realized that the woman had not only been trapped, she had also been carrying love. She had been carrying the parts of Charlotte that were kind and gentle. Charlotte and the woman continued to talk. They shared memories of the palace, of the music room, of the princess, and of the small moments of happiness. They laughed softly at some memories. They cried at others. The room felt warm and the air felt calm. The healer watched them with a gentle smile. She could see that the two parts of Charlotte were beginning to connect. She could see that they were beginning to understand each other. After some time, the healer spoke again. "You have done well," she said. "Now you must rest. You will continue this tomorrow." Charlotte nodded. She felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired. It was the kind of tired that comes after a long conversation that matters. It was the kind of tired that comes after taking a step forward. The guard returned to escort them back to their room. Charlotte and the woman walked slowly, holding hands. They felt closer than before. They felt like they were not fighting each other anymore. They felt like they were becoming a team. As they walked through the palace halls, Charlotte noticed something she had not seen before. The palace was full of people who looked like they were carrying something heavy. Some looked tired. Some looked worried. Some looked sad. Charlotte realized that she was not the only one who was struggling. She realized that everyone in the palace had a story. Everyone had a burden. Everyone had a fear. Charlotte looked at the woman and whispered, "We are not alone." The woman nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "We are not alone." Charlotte felt a new sense of purpose. She realized that her journey was not only about healing herself. It was also about learning to understand others. It was about learning to be kind. It was about learning to see the people around her. She realized that the palace was not just a place of rules and expectations. It was also a place of people who were trying their best. Charlotte felt a small hope in her heart. She felt like she was starting to understand herself. She felt like she was starting to understand the world around her, and she knew that she still had a long way to go. But she also knew that she was not alone. Charlotte woke up feeling a little stronger. The night had been calm, and the room felt warmer. The palace outside was alive with sound again, soft footsteps, voices, and the distant music of servants preparing for the day. It was as if the world had returned to its normal rhythm. Charlotte looked at the woman sitting in the chair. She looked calmer too. Her eyes were brighter and she seemed less afraid. The fear was still there, but it had become smaller, like a storm that was slowly moving away. Charlotte smiled. "Good morning," she said softly. The woman returned the smile. "Good morning," she replied. Charlotte felt a strange sense of peace. She realized that she had not felt this calm in a long time. She realized that she had been carrying a heavy burden for so long that she had forgotten what peace felt like. Charlotte stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the palace gardens. The sun was rising and the flowers looked bright and full of life. The trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. The world outside looked beautiful. Charlotte thought about the journey she had been on. She thought about the moment she had heard her own voice behind the door. She thought about the fear she had felt. She thought about the woman who had been trapped inside. She thought about the healer who had helped her. She thought about the conversations she had shared with the woman. Charlotte realized that she had learned something important. She had learned that fear was not something to be ashamed of. She had learned that it was okay to feel scared. She had learned that it was okay to ask for help. She turned away from the window and sat on the bed. She looked at the woman and said, "I think we are ready." The woman looked at her with a mix of hope and nervousness. "Ready for what?" she asked. Charlotte took a deep breath. Ready to return to the music room, she said. Ready to face what happened, ready to face the palace, ready to move forward. The woman's eyes widened. Are you sure? She asked. What if it happens again? What if we get trapped again? Charlotte nodded slowly. I am sure, she said. We will be careful, we will be together, we will support each other. The woman looked at Charlotte for a moment, then nodded. Okay, she said softly. Let's go. Charlotte stood up and walked to the door. She opened it and stepped into the corridor. The palace looked the same, but Charlotte felt different. She felt stronger. She felt more aware. She felt like she was not alone anymore. The guard met them outside the door. He bowed respectfully. Are you ready? He asked. Charlotte nodded. Yes, she said. The guard led them through the palace halls. The palace was busy now, filled with people going about their daily work. The guards walked with purpose. The servants moved quickly. The air was filled with the sound of activity. Charlotte noticed that the people looked at her differently now. She noticed that they seemed more respectful. She noticed that they seemed kinder. She realized that they had heard about what happened. She realized that the palace had been talking about her. Charlotte felt a strange mix of emotions. She felt embarrassed. She felt proud. She felt scared. She felt hopeful. The guard led them to the music room. The door stood in front of them, tall and solid. Charlotte felt her heart beat faster. The room felt familiar, but it also felt different. It felt like a place that held a secret. Charlotte looked at the woman. Are you ready? She asked. The woman nodded. Yes, she said. Charlotte reached for the door handle. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She felt the fear rising inside her, but she also felt something else, strength. She felt the strength of knowing that she was not alone. She felt the strength of knowing that she had someone inside her who cared. Charlotte opened the door slowly. The music room looked the same as before. The piano stood in the center. The shelves of sheet music were still there. The room felt calm. The air felt soft. Charlotte stepped inside. The woman followed her. Charlotte walked to the piano and sat down. She placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath and began to play. At first, the music sounded shaky. Charlotte's hands trembled slightly. But as she continued, the notes began to flow more smoothly. The melody rose and fell like a wave. Charlotte felt the music move through her. She felt her fear begin to fade. The woman sat beside her, listening. She looked at Charlotte with a calm expression. She seemed to be finding comfort in the music, too. Charlotte continued to play. She played the piece she had been practicing before the incident. She played it slowly, carefully. She played it with feeling. She played it with her heart. As she played, Charlotte felt something shift inside her. She felt the fear becoming smaller. She felt the sadness becoming lighter. She felt the connection between her and the woman growing stronger. When she finished the piece, she sat quietly for a moment. She listened to the sound of the room. She listened to the silence. She felt a sense of peace. The guard stepped into the room quietly. He bowed respectfully. Ma'am, he said, you are safe. Charlotte nodded. Thank you, she said softly. The guard looked at the woman. Are you feeling better? He asked. The woman nodded. Yes, she said. I feel better. The guard smiled. Good, he said. You are both welcome to stay here as long as you need. Charlotte nodded. She felt a wave of gratitude. She realized that she had been given a chance to heal. She realized that she had been given a chance to become whole again. The guard left the room, closing the door behind him. Charlotte turned to the woman. We did it, she said softly. The woman smiled. Yes, she said, we did. Charlotte felt a tear roll down her cheek. She did not try to stop it. She let it fall. She felt the sadness, but she also felt the hope. Charlotte stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the palace gardens. The world outside looked beautiful. The sun was shining. The flowers were bright. The trees swayed gently. Charlotte realized that she had changed. She realized that she had learned something important. She realized that she had found a new strength. She turned back to the woman and said, We will be okay. The woman nodded. Yes, she said, we will be. Charlotte smiled. She sat back at the piano and began to play again, letting the music fill the room. She knew that the journey was not over. She knew that there would still be difficult days. But she also knew that she had learned to be kind to herself. She had learned to ask for help. She had learned to share her fear. And she knew that she was not alone. She was whole again.